from the foreign exchange differentials from the last budget till now, which is a good thing. And which means also that this budget will not be funded from loans. We will not be borrowing to fund this budget. And that, for me, and I believe a number of us, is a very critical issue. Having said that, this budget is also, we are told, intended to augment expenditures in the security sector, defense and security. And I support that wholeheartedly. And I think that all of us in this chamber, nobody here will be opposed to expenditures on defense and security. But expending huge sums of money, now more than $500 billion, almost $1 trillion, being pumped again into that sector, very critical. It raises the issue of whether there is proper bench priorities and the targets are properly met. And that calls to question, Mr. President, our constitutional responsibility, and which is why I will support that while we pass these estimates, let us support our committees. Let us follow our rules as to the budget naira with the stakeholders. Also demands accountability. We need results. We need to benchmark their performance. It's one thing coming asking for billions and billions for these monies to go, and there are inadequacies, we deal with it next time. But I don't think I'm satisfied about the benchmarking, about all these monies that we always appropriate, every supplementary budget, every main budget. So I suggest that our committees, not just the appropriation committee, let us follow our laid down procedure for passing a bill, more so a money bill like this, so that the committees can do their proper work, ask the relevant questions that need to be asked, and hold them accountable. Having said that, Mr. President, I have read in the papers, and we have also seen in the summary here, that about 300 billion naira is earmarked for federal roads. Mr. President, and this chamber knows that last year, because of the devastating flood, a number of the roads, very few federal roads, by the way, in my state, were affected. Our state was cut off completely, and we went through hell. And because of that, there were some considerations, and some of the roads were meant to have benefited from federal intervention, which were captured in the supplementary budget. But because of all that we know that the implementation of that budget was put in abeyance. My request and my hope is that those projects that were captured should be reflected. I have read some big roads in some parts of our country in the newspapers. But let us budget, let us be sure that this 300 billion for the works covers all the critical roads. And then lastly, I'm particularly happy about the investment in the housing sector, all the geopolitical zones. That is very encouraging. We support that. And on the whole, I also join in saying that this bill be read a second time. In fact, if we're proposing to pass it, I will also support that today, as soon as we can. I so move.
The last speaker did not keep to the agreement. So he used about 10 minutes. So he has used up the time of 5 people. So based on that, I will only ask a question. Is there anybody who is opposed to this supplementary bill? And in that case, why do we just give an opportunity to the chairman, finance, and chairman appropriation, and then we do the needful. Chairman finance, then chairman appropriation.
Yeah, I've not spoken.
Okay. Mr. President,
it is the view of the Senate that the document is coming to you, and that at that stage you can do what you like. So let us hear from distinguished Senator Ome. Anything additional, because it's the view of the Senate that we move on to other things.
Some of us from the parliamentary bill, whole and entire, and wants to commend the provision made in this supplementary bill for the housing sector. That's a critical sector. The only thing is that housing is something that takes time to provide. And this supplementary budget is just for a short term of about 2 months, bearing extension, which Senator Ndume alluded to. But the urgency of the passage of this supplementary bill recognizes the fact that the supplementary election, or rather the 3 elections we provided 18 billion naira for, will be taking place next week. So we need to pass it urgently so that they can access this fund to be able to conduct that election very well. Then I'm very happy with the students' loan scheme. The students' loan is something that is everywhere, both in America. The children of this country should have access to loan to fund their educational pursuits. This is a small sum, this 8 billion. So I believe that in the 2024 budget, the president should be making adequate provision for student loans, because students all over the place are looking for people to pay their school fees. Let them go and take these funds and borrow and pay back when they graduate, so that this idea of everybody calling you to pay his school fees, they should know that there's a provision made by government. When they borrow it, they go through their studies, get employed, and pay back. It will even make them to work harder. So I support that this supplementary bill, budget bill, be read for a second time.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Kau, you heard everybody is in the affirmative, and Distinguished Senator Ome has particularly praised the government for even making a provision for students' loans. And I think that their provision is about 8 billion, which should be between now and end of December. But others have also raised issues as to what happens after December, whether we can exhaust this amount. It might be extended, but this is Parliament. This is the Senate. So we have the power to even extend if we so wish. But let us give them the opportunity to commence the implementation. Senator Kau, you have something to add?
Mr. President, my dear distinguished colleague, Mr. President, I am in almost 80 to 85% align myself with 85 to 90%. I am in support of this submission, and I align myself with most of the speakers. And I support and commend executive, more especially Mr. President, on his foresight of the area of security and works. Another area which we need to commend the executive is housing, but I have a reservation on students. Do a lot in satisfying the needs of our constituents. I differ with the thinking of some of our colleagues in the area of our student loan, which in my own understanding, we need to do a lot, more especially in the loan, in the bill or in the law which establish the student loan scheme. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, there are some issues which we need to look into, more especially in the area of oversight, like 405 issues, limited availability we took a motion on the distribution of Bank of Industry where we discussed a lot about the procedure. The requirement is very, very cumbersome. It is difficult for a student to meet the requirement. Then, of course, default and the consequences of the default, and therefore we need to discuss all these nitty-gritty. There are so many areas which we need to touch as a parliament approve the loan.
General opinion expressed by previous speakers. Nobody is opposed in the budget. Security, workers' wages and salaries, agriculture, which that it is now time for you to decide whether we should pass this bill for the second time. But nobody is opposed to it, as I said earlier. So it's a well-packaged, well-focused, and well-intentioned budget. I therefore support the passage of it wholeheartedly. Thank you very much.
Point of order.
Point of order, Senator Baribe.
I'm reading order 58.
And
That's the issue from the choir only. Is for contribution
602 fund for capital.
To raise added for. In addition to this, relating to floor FCA,
Because this is probably one of the best CVs that we have received so far in the 10th Senate. So even with your CV, we believe that you know what you are doing. So summarize and then answer one or two questions from distinguished senators. You are welcome.
President of the Senate, Deputy President of the Senate, and most importantly, my chairman, who happened to be my wonderful mentor before becoming the chairman of Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Sonny Musa. My name is Adedeji Zak Adelabu. I was born January 8, 1978, in a village called Iwate. I attended AUD Primary School, from there to Methodist High School in Fiditi. From there to Federal Polytechnic Ede to study accounting, where I graduated with distinction, and from there proceeded to Obafemi Awolowo University in Ife, where I read management and accounting, and by grace of God, graduated with first class in accounting. And then from there, I started work with Procter & Gamble, and I reached corporate finance manager, general control, and accounting. Until recently, I was president, acting chairman, Federal Land Revenue. Thank you, sir.
Distinguished Senator Adams Oshimole.
Allow me to say something. I've gone through the CV of the very young man standing before us. I call him a young man because my first son is older than him. In the process, he had all the exposure. He's got certification from professional bodies. I think that his appointment, in my humble opinion, Mr. President, is in line with Mr. President's commitment to show that what elders can do, younger people these days can do it even better in a more digitalized way that will raise productivity and ensure that at the heart of Nigeria's problem today, Mr. President, is the huge revenue gap between what we need and what we have. And internationally, the world is unanimous that Nigeria can collect more taxes than we collect today. Rather than borrowing, if we have more efficient tax collection and cure the system of loopholes and ensure that we block all the leakages, and all those who are supposed to pay taxes pay their taxes and they are remitted promptly, I think that Nigeria will be a step ahead. Because of your rule, which I want to obey, I don't want to be like the man who stole 10 minutes from his colleagues. I just write to support, to endorse his nomination, and to thank Mr. President for fulfilling his promise that he will show that we have young, active, vibrant, and competent Nigerians that can be entrusted with very sensitive national assignments. I so support, Mr. President.
I think the microphone is processing. Let me thank you for not being in the habit of stealing time and minutes from your colleagues. But also to let you know that the last person did not steal, that he spoke and was totally protected by the chair. He did not. I was happy with what he was saying. So he was actually saying what 4 or 5 other senators would have said. And he was very clear that his submission was very lucid and straight to the point. So he actually captured all. So let me invite the distinguished Senator Sunday Marshall Khartoum so that he can add his voice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Sunday Marshall Khartoum. I represent the people of Kaduna South Senatorial District. I'm from Kaduna State. Your Excellency, I want to also lend my voice and support this nomination, and to say that we had ample opportunity of interacting with the nominee during our retreat, and he showed quality, competence, and effectiveness during the course of that interaction. And if we are talking about experience, he exhibited sufficient experience to warrant his nomination by Mr. President. So I therefore rise to support that the nominee be allowed to take a leave of the Senate and go. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Hearing from somebody, the APC, that the nominee is perfect and that Mr. President is commended.
Your Excellency, thank you for the opportunity. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Asuko Ekpenyong, Senator representing Cross River South. As Commissioner of Finance in Oyo, did a fantastic job. As the Special Advisor Revenue to the governor, to the President of this country, he did a fantastic job. As ES of the Sugar Council, he did a wonderful job. And in the 2 months he has superintended over the Federal Inland Revenue Service, he has been doing a fantastic job. Just 2 weeks ago, at the training for senators held in Ikotekpene, he displayed his capacity. Sir, I would like to add my voice to everyone that has spoken before me to say that this man is fit for the job, and to say that please may he take a bow if the chamber agrees. Thank you, sir.
You know, I don't expect you even said that we can consider 14-year-olds for appointment. You told me that. So I don't know, many of you in these 70s and 80s, myself and Senator Adams Oshimole, we can't understand how people grew up so fast. But it's a digital age and you are digital growth. So, but let me hear at least from, let's get some kind of attestation from his state of origin. He's from Oyo State. So, distinguished Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari.
Mr. President, Buhari Abdul Fattah, Oyo State. Mr. President,
the young man standing before you, we served together, myself, Senator Yunus Akintunde, and Sharafa. Yunus Akintunde was Commissioner for Works. He was Commissioner for Finance. I was Commissioner for Local Government and Chief Statutory Affairs. At that time, when we were serving, the IGR of the state was very, very, very low. At the time, our IGR was less than 1 billion. By the time we finished our tenure, the IGR was more than 3-point-something billion. We were not borrowing at all, and we were able to take our situation, or your state at that time, where we ought to be. He did very well, and he's a go-getter. I always call him young but mighty. And when the president appointed him as the SA, that time I said, it's okay. This guy should be taken somewhere where he will be able to do a very good work and excel. So I was not surprised eventually when he emerged. Senator Adam Oshimole said something that is impressed with his CV, but I was talking about character. Mr. Distinguished colleague, we can attest to his character. If somebody has done Commissioner for Finance, and after that is not parading EFCC or ICPC, you can see that that alone attests to his character. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Well, the distinguished Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari, you don't go to EFCC because you have committed a crime. You go to EFCC because you have ambition, and your enemies want to bring you down. It's today that I know that we are colleagues. You know, I was also a commissioner for local government and chief tenancy affairs. So each time I look at your forehead, I always see something similar to back. Distinguished Senator Yunus.
Mr. President, my name is Yunus Akintunde. As earlier said, Zach is for my senatorial district. Not only that, he was the Commissioner of Finance when I was the Commissioner for Works. And I can say it loud and clear that he assisted us in saving the state from running into debt. I was with him when we were at the World Bank to negotiate the infrastructure facility loan. And with his assistance, I know what we did for that state. Zach, standing before you, sir, is a man of good character. As Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari said, he's a goal-getter. He was the youngest among us, but I always carry him along because as the Commissioner for Works and Transport then, I wouldn't want to put my state into financial crisis. We have the best of time with him, and I want to assure Nigeria and stand in on his behalf. The three of us have met, the three senators from Oyo State, and we resolved that we will stand up here and beat our chest on behalf of our colleagues that Zach is a material for Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Nobody seems to have any question. So let me insist. Two people should ask questions. The first person should be Senator Ifeanyi Ubah. Even though it's within your age bracket, ask question.
Well, Mr. President, I don't know. I need protection because you said I should ask questions. But where I have issue is to ask my colleagues. This is a man I met in Harvard, and he led the Harvard class on reforms in Africa. In Harvard, yes. And some few years ago, he led the reforms.
You went to visit somebody in Harvard, then you met him.
Executive course in Harvard, and he led Nigerian delegation in a very difficult situation in reforms in Africa. I don't even know what we stand again to ask questions. From all people have said here, Let us just confirm him and then just take a bow and go. Thank you. That is it. There's no question.
Distinguished colleagues, Mohammed Alindumi. Mine is question to the incoming chairman, inshallah. Tax and revenue generated from the sale of our crude oil is the major source of our income. That of tax is the one that we can rely more because it goes up. Now my question is, now that Nigeria is depending so much on tax collection, and there are loopholes, especially in relation to expanding the tax basket, like property tax, communication service tax, and most importantly, revenue assurance. Because right now, it is the institution or the individuals that determine their tax that they will pay. Why do I say so? It's because it is only the civil servants and we, the public servants like us, our tax is deducted straight from our income from the management. But others are taxed based on what they declare. What are you going to do to address this loophole, I can say, where serious money is being lost? I give you one example. MTN and other communication service providers are the ones that tell or declare their earnings and pay tax based on that. There is no checking independently from Federal Inland Revenue to determine what call we make and how much goes for tax, despite the fact that tax on communication have been already declared by law. How are you going to address this matter?
Yes, the leaders. Any further question?
Yeah, Mr. President, I'm Senator Ashiro. And I stand to totally support Mr. Zacchaeus for this position. We had a good feel of him in Uyo, and we are all happy about the way he handles things. But I would still want to ask a question. Each time I pass by, when I go to my house in Wusetu, I always see this giant building, and I learned that it's an FRS headquarters. It's been there for a very long time. I don't know how many years. And I know the building had run into crisis, management crisis, financial crisis, to the extent that I'm afraid it might be there, like most abandoned building in Nigeria, federal government abandoned building. I want to know, as the manager of resources of FRS, and based on the fact that you have been there for some number of months, I want to know what you will do to make sure that this building is completed and put into use as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
There are just two more questions. After the chairman of finance, the deputy senate president will end it.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair. My distinguished colleagues, I think this is the best time that this country is witnessing real transformation since after the First Republic. Because most of the nominees that are standing before the Senate are within an age bracket that our parents those days were appointed ministers at that age. So I think it's a very good thing for this country. The man standing before us, who is the acting chairman, executive chairman of FIRS, is a familiar person, especially in the financial sector. He's one of those best brains that are working on the reforms that we are about to see in taxation in this country. A lot of people have been making a lot of complaints, especially the downtrodden, especially those in the informal sector as well, where they are being forced, when they are carrying their goods somewhere, they are being forced to pay tax from non-state actors. They collect this money, and surprisingly, from the job this committee is doing, which I believe was initiated by the man standing before us, they've been able to unravel so many things that are going with tax collection in this country. What we see and what is being declared as the tax collected in this country might not be the real figure. So I believe now that with the reform coming, Mr. Chairman is going to give Nigeria a better return. But yet, I will ask Mr. Chairman to explain just one thing to this hallowed chamber. And that, as I said, there are over 200 leakages or ways of collecting revenue. And we want to now limit those 200 ways to only about 10 or 20 means that this revenue can be collected. And you know, we are the least in the whole world today. We are one of the least that our payee, the tax we collect from our payee, is one of the lowest. Is one of the highest. One of the highest. Meanwhile, individuals that make a lot of money, even from government, they pay less revenue. So from this reform that we are going to do, I believe you will be able to highlight to the chamber what advantage it will bring and also reduce the complaints from the downtrodden in terms of revenue collection. And after that, I think, Your Excellency, you can let him take a bow and leave after the Deputy Senate President has spoken. And so,
Mr. Chairman, the mandate given to us by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to screen nominees submitted to us by Mr. President and get them cleared. The purpose of that is to make sure whether such person or persons have the capacity or are qualified to perform their functions. So, given to them by Mr. President. Now, Mr. Zach is well known to us. We'll be interacting with him over the years. We know him as a person of capacity, somebody who, not only in the financial sector, but somebody who is versed in almost all aspects of our lives. We know him very well. The purpose is to screen, but we know this nominee very well. We know him. And to cap it all, recently we had a summit. He was one of the resource persons there. He spoke very well. We asked him several questions, and he answered. Is that not something to find out whether somebody is qualified? He showed immense capacity. We are not even talking about his quality. No, we are not talking about his resume. Keep resume aside. First class here, first class there, first class there, everything. No. We're talking about practical performance. He delivered a paper, We asked him questions. We had more time, over an hour, asking him questions. He answered. So I feel it's quite improper for us, for me as a person who, I know him very well, not to say something. Not to say something. This man is very qualified, more than qualified, to perform this function. I therefore call on my colleagues, let's not waste more time. Allow him to bow and go. He has the capacity, Mr. Chairman. Let him go. Mr. Nominee, congratulations.
Let me say that Mr. Zach Adedeji is very well known to all of us. In fact, very recently, he was a resource person at the retreat that we had. But right now, he is talking to Nigerians. It will be not us. We know him. It will be a disservice to him if he does the same kind of prowess that he displayed when he was talking to us. We don't give him the opportunity to do the same for Nigerians to watch. I think there are one or two pertinent questions. I'll ask the last, but let the chairman of preparation just ask him a question so that he will take all at once. It's not a waste of time. It's for the education of Nigerians. We are not doubting his capacity. Yes, Yayi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair. Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair. Adiola Solomon Olamilekon, representing Ogun West Senatorial District. Mr. President, let me thank you for giving me the opportunity to address our nominee. Mr. President, the nominee standing before you, yes, is my friend and somebody that I know over the years. But I have a question that is disturbing me. And I strongly believe that that question has to do with him directly. And I want to ask that what is his position on the use of tax credit scheme on road contracts? Because over the years, Mr. President, there's an executive order 007 under which this tax credit scheme are being used. And what that simply means is that many agencies, some agencies of the government and individuals have been coming forward to adopt this particular system in trying to provide infrastructure to the government. But invariably, what that simply means is that government revenue is being converted as credit to this company for whatever infrastructure they've provided. And I want to know the basis at which we arrive at this credit given to these companies or individuals who have engaged in this scheme. So as the chairman, incoming chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, I want him to explain and tell this distinguished Senate what his position is. Is it a scheme that we should continue with or a scheme that we should discontinue? That's my question, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Chairman, he has just asked you about the tax credit scheme. And your friend, distinguished Senator Sani Musa, also pointed out the fact that we are getting too much tax on payee rather than getting tax on production and consumption or otherwise. Now, I want to also finally ask you a question. What will you do as part of your efforts to increase the revenue of the Federation? What's your position on all these waivers, where certain people can get waivers of up to 10 trillion in a year? I don't know, you understand what I'm saying? Because where the school teacher is paying tax directly from meager salary, and the other person is getting a waiver on import duties, and the person is going to make profit, the person gets a waiver of 1 trillion and makes a profit of 5 trillion, and the school teacher gets a salary of 50,000 and pays maybe 5,000 on tax, and the person that makes profit of trillions gets waiver of trillions. Are we not robbing Paul to pay Peter? What will you do differently to make sure that the revenue of the Federation is improved upon?
Thank you. Excuse me. I appreciate all the questions of the excuse me. The questions of the distinguished senators, and I will start from Senator Ndume on the fact that what are we going to do to all these leakages, most especially considering that we rely so much on oil revenue and the way they are. Now, what I will say is that wonderful attempts have been made to make sure that we correct all the fiscal imbalances that we inherited in oil and gas by passage of PIA, which is majorly putting real fiscal structure in place. So if that law is properly followed, I think most of the leakages we have in oil and gas today will definitely go. Secondly, is that what we need is actually the data. The problem we have as a nation is not the collection, is that we don't even have data to plan. What is the total acreage? How much do we ship? How much do we take? How much is this? If you ask those people sometimes, you ask them 10 times, they give you 10 different answers. One of the decisions and one of the vision that I have as a premier revenue agency is to develop the data upon which we will make decisions. It is when we have data that we can plan with, so we will not be the one asking them, how much are you going to pay? Because of the data we have. For example, let's say we have the single window that we are trying to propose, that you know all ship coming into Nigeria, and you know the content of all the shipping going out of Nigeria, excluding this agency, that a single window, which Mr. President is promoting now. And you have this data. This is the number of vessels we have. This is the owner. This is this. When you gather all those ones, it is you writing to them and say, are the plans that the number of data that when they see your plate number, they know who you are. One of those things, by God's grace, that we are going to promote is that we will see the identification system in Nigeria using NIN through NIMC that we have. That NIN becomes the basic identity that all of us will have. Your card will be linked to it, your car will be linked to it, everything will be linked to it. So that when we run the report, and then when you talk about those people that evade taxes, I just want to send good news to us here, that if your NIN is properly to Rolls-Royce, to Bentley, and then you said your tax clearance is 100,000, we will ask who gave you the gift of the car, whether they pay taxes or not. Because you can't have tax clearance of 100,000 and you have 3 Rolls-Royce. How come? Federal Road Safety will link that to your NIN. The same thing we see from your ATM. You have 3 business class to London in a week, and then your tax clearance is 3,000. We will write you a love letter asking you that we know that you have just come back, someone gave you this, how come did you have this? So by God's grace, we will make so we will make best. The second question is on the help of our property. We are not going to tax the seed, but if you earn more, you pay more. And if you earn less, you will not pay. And if you look at our situation today, if you are a big company, have turnover more than 100 million, you will pay 30%. If you're concerned. So on payee, majorly is state border, but we have Nexus, because if it is well with them, it will also be well with us. And then that of my friend and brother and prophet, Senator. So the only thing we need to check is they brought the issue about tax credit. There was a purpose, but I agree with you 100% as today that purpose, we need to go and change it for many reasons. One, The law says, Section 62, yes, that all revenue money, taxes are federation money that we have. So we have those challenges. By God's grace, we will look into that and re-evaluate whether the reason the president of the Senate, as at that time, the taxes paid by Dangote alone is more than all banks capitalized in Nigeria. It's like when you have a baby, you give them money to go. Not following up. We don't know the limit. So we evaluate their economic importance, whether they are still useful or not. I will not support. And then when you have something that have stopped now, even without any law, you have a hotel getting pioneer status. What can hotel do that will give them pioneer status? We've been sleeping or staying in hotels since we were born, since my brother was born, everybody. So what is the new thing that any hotel will say they are doing now that will qualify them for pioneer status? So those are the things, by God's grace, will review. And I know by the time we are done, with your support, because the basis of any revenue generating is law. So as long as we will. Thank you very much, sir.
For instance, you touched on something we didn't even ask. Pioneer status is where a new business comes on board. Then you give it NIAPC also. We'll give it pioneer status in order to exempt it from tax for that business to grow. But you now know that it has been abused and that they even give pioneer status to hotels. So, and you are asking, you have been sleeping in hotels since you were born. So what is the new business? An OML that has been in existence for over 10 years. Suddenly a Nigerian, it changes hands, and the Nigerian goes to obtain pioneer status for a producing oil field that has been producing and paying tax for over 10 years. And then they say you are exempted from tax. How is that OML? Yes. How is that OML a new business? Yeah. I know that you've already scared some. You pay only 10,000 in a year. So to be honest, it's not me. It's not me. In fact, because of what he said about the fact that if you have up to 7 vehicles, you have Bentley, you have Rolls Royce, you have this, and then they look at your tax, and it's only 50,000 in the year. This is a man we need for this business. So, but before I say that, it is up to the Senate. Let me give his colleague to finalize. Also in the Harvard PhD in taxation.
GDP to tax is 18%. Meaning that we have rooms, opportunities to bring in more people into the tax nets and get more revenue. But the challenge is economic power of people to be taxed. Are you advising Mr. President of Nigeria to look at tax integration, at least partial integration, meaning that was concerned about PE. PE is for the state government, to celebrate, to look at inward into the economic and the poverty ratio that we have in this country. And that's a very, very important one. Secondly, Mr. President, is the fact that expenses